Welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at this pen. You may recognize the packaging. Looks kind of similar to a German pen manufacturer, but if you look a little bit more closely, you'll notice there's no German on this. Some characters, some symbols. This is an interesting symbol. We'll see that repeated on this side of the box. So let's open up this box. It's not the best quality. It's kind of falling apart a little bit in the seams, but it does serve its function of transporting the pen. The clip looks familiar, and when we turn it over, the pen looks familiar. It comes in this classic plastic sleeve, and as you notice, the clip is tight. So the sleeve will come off, and then we have this label, which is now much more common, as I've found in a lot of the Chinese pens that I've gotten. Looks like the manufacturing date is July 24th of 2017. So this was shipped a few weeks after it was made. So let's take a look at the eBay auction. As you can see, the price was extremely reasonable. And if we take a look at the top of the pen, there's that symbol, logo, however you may call it, which is interesting, and it's repeated. We slide off the plastic sleeve and we look at a metal Lamy, a Lamy All-Star, they might say. At least that's what it appears to be. Just a black insert at the bottom of the barrel. You got your ink window. As you'll notice, there's a little spring agitator inside there because it comes with a converter. So for the price of less than a Lamy converter, you can get a full pen that looks a lot like a Lamy, feels like a Lamy. Cap comes off as a snap very easily, and we see now the first unique difference is you have a completely clear section and feed. The nib is labeled extra fine. It's a 0.38. which is what they've been using for designations, and it looks very similar to the wing design of the Lamy nib. You have this little ring here, which at one time I thought this had to do with the snap cap, but really the end of this section has a little bit of an insert there, and that really fits into the cap inside, the liner inside the cap. And with the Lamys, you can unscrew. I haven't looked at how this thing comes apart. Probably a little bit differently the way that that clip is inserted there. It's just a standard unscrew. A fair number of threads, and you can see a converter. Wow, it has a red knob to raise and lower it. Yeah, it's a standard converter, nothing fancy. That sees this might pop out in case you wanted to clean it or re-lubricate it. But it is nice, that crystal clear section. And the other thing that it has gotten some different reviews, but I like these inserted threads into the cap. Obviously this is kind of like a pressed, probably aluminum from the weight of it, and then coated with some type of lacquer. Time will tell how wear resistant that lacquer coating is, but I think that really makes those threads extremely concise and consistent. And screwing back on the section, it's not the easiest thing to do. I think I cross-threaded it right there. So doing over the camera as usual, things get a little bit different. After talking about the threads, there we go. So it is easy to misthread it. Obviously. It feels like a Lamy Safari in the hand. You know, you can post it. It doesn't post very deeply. It makes for a big pen, and not something I would probably write with post because it does change the weight, but it feels fine. This comes in a number of different colors, and since I bought mine, let's look at some of the other auctions that are currently on eBay. This is towards the end of August of 2017. And they all have that wing sung, which is nicely done where you might see the Lamy logo. So it comes in a number of different colors. The price seems to have dropped by about $1. So that's always good. And you can get a 5-pack for also a pretty good price. I'm certain that these changes, considering this pen is kind of interesting and may generate a decent amount of interest, there's not a lot of sellers on eBay as you might find with some of the more common Chinese pens, but this is certainly something of interest. When I first looked at the pen, I thought the coating was a little bit off, and I felt it was a little bit rough, and at times you can catch the light on it, but it is pretty well done. I mean, it's done as well as a Lamy Safari from my perspective, or a Lamy All-Star. I don't have a real exact one to compare it to. Nice strong clip there. So here's the Lamy All-Star that I have. This is probably well over 20 years old. I've had it for a while. As you notice, there's a plastic insert which also doubles as that ring piece here. And I've unscrewed the section because what I want to do is explore how compatible these components are. So we'll take this out and we'll compare these. I mean, as far as the shape of the section goes, that certainly looks very familiar, but as you can see, there's a lot of differences here. The threads don't match up. So there's not a way that these two parts can be interchanged. And sadly, the converter also will not fit well. It fits tight in the Wing Sung, but won't fit at all. It just slides right in and out. So the end of this feed, which is what connects to the opening in the converter, is a different size on the Lamy versus the Wing Sung, so they're not completely compatible. Let's see if I can take this. That nib slides out very easily from the Wing Sung. I need a gripper for this, I think. So that's one difference. I have my classic gripper here. And of course with this, you notice the whole section comes out. I haven't been able to pull the section out of the Wing Sung, but I'm not going to force things. But the nib also fits a lot tighter on the feed on the Lamy than it does on the Wing Sung. I mean, there's some similarities. The way the ink will feed up from the converter from the back is the same. And the first thing we're going to do is let's see if the Wing Sung nib fits on the Lamy feed. And it does, and it fits tightly like the Lamy nib fits on here. So let's try the Lamy nib on the Wing Sung. It slides in and it slides in easy. So it looks like the main difference is the nibs are probably of the same dimensions, but the feed is slightly smaller on the Wing Sung, so you don't get as tight a fit. You know, that comes out a little bit easier than I expected and than I would like, but we'll see how it works in everyday writing. That's probably easy to fix by just changing the shape of the nib. I'm not going to do that now because I'm not interested in changing these out. I may at some point in time, but that would make it fit a little bit easier. As far as fit a bit tighter. And as you can see, you still need a little bit of help to get the nib off the feed on the Lamy. I love live cameras. So assemble the Lamy. Next thing I'm going to do is give a flush for the section and ink this baby up and see how it writes. The reputation on at least one review that I read that it writes pretty well for an extra fine, as well as you can expect. This up, I just did a slight tweaking of the nib and now it fits as tight here as it did in the Lamy. So I'm going to use this ink. Haven't used this ink for a while, so interesting to give it a shot in this pen, and I think it's a cool color to use with this pen. Definitely a caramel color. Caramel. So we'll just dip it in, put the piston down. Let's see that color fill the section. Interesting, not a lot of ink came up. Oh no, there we go. It came up pretty good. It's a pretty good fill for a first fill, but I always flush twice and 3 times usually, just because I want the ink to really flow through the section well. And the second fill is a little bit more. That's a cool looking color in that clear section, I have to admit. So we're going to do one more. I didn't dry it out as thoroughly as I usually do after cleaning, so I want to make certain that it's more ink than water in there. So that's a nice full fill. I mean, it's probably, you know, less than a mil. So just wondering if this ink might be a little bit light for this extra fine nib, but when we put nib to paper, we'll find out. And that certainly looks nice. We got some good sunlight coming in here. Yeah, it's filled in that feed very well with all those nice ink collector grooves in there, rings in there. So next thing is nib to paper. And I mean, that grip feels just like you'd expect on any Lamy Safari or All-Star. It's a light pen, will give you those measurements. So we're going to put nib to paper. Sorry for the nib to paper, but it's now going to happen. My first reactions is it's a smooth nib and pretty wet for an extra fine. I mean, this is a light ink and it works well in this pen. I'm impressed. You don't need much pressure to write. If you put a little pressure on it, just puts down a little bit more ink, probably twice as much because it doesn't put down a lot of ink to begin with. But, you know, I'm happy. You know, this Fabriano paper, this ink is going to dry pretty quickly, but I like it. And you're going to hear a little bit of the nib on paper because this does have some texture to it. So to me, this is the perfect combination of feedback and the flow is nice. So overall, for a $4 pen, which is now $3 from a lot of different places on eBay, this is a great buy. And if you get a 5-pack, it's even nicer, and it comes down in a bunch of different colors as the sun comes back out. So overall, another interesting find from Chinese pens. A lot of discussion on Wing Sung that definitely stopped making pens in the late 1990s. 99, I think, is when they finally closed up. And then their name was bought. They sold vintage stock for a while, and now they're starting to label some more pens and come out with stuff. So call this pen what you like. It's a nice pen, and it certainly has some interesting features. The clear feed is fascinating just to look at it. See that ink pool around those fins in the section. So I have more Chinese pens on the way and more sitting in my box ready to review. So hopefully I'll get to those in the next couple days. It's a little bit distracting. It's you know, it's towards the end of August, so summertime is towards the end. The U.S. Open tennis tournament is on, and I like to go to see it. It's relatively close by. And if I'm not there, watching the matches on TV is just almost as enjoyable. So I'm fitting in my pens as I can. So again, I give this a thumbs up, recommend it. Just keep in mind it is a very tight clip, but functional. You wouldn't be sliding this on jeans pocket's going to be a challenge, and getting it out of the shirt you put it in is also a challenge, but it's not going to fall out accidentally. That's, you know, so for every yin there's a yang, and so take that as an interesting characteristic of this pen. So thank you for watching. You notice it started up right away after a few minutes of talk without writing. And I think this is going to be an excellent writer. I'm very happy with it. And even though I'm not an extra fine nib fan, and with this lighter ink, it still works well. So may you enjoy all of your writing experiences. May you enjoy putting nib to paper, having ink change the paper's characteristics and convey information. So until later, bye.